This incident, Brian Albert got rid of his house, the whole thing. Just sold it. His childhood home, a home that had been in the Albert family for generations. He literally sold it mere months after this incident. Dog rehomed, phones destroyed, house sold. You'll learn that all these things happened shortly after the incident where John O'Keefe was found unresponsive and dying in Brian Albert's front lawn.
Once again, there you see Alan Jackson in his opening statement directly going after Brian Albert, okay? Going after him. They want the attention on Brian Albert. They believe Brian Albert is part of this conspiracy and cover-up involving the death of John O'Keefe. But here's Brian Albert back in the first trial talking about two of those issues that Alan Jackson just spoke about, the dog and the home. Take a listen.
After you learned that there were questions being raised about John's injuries and dog bites and scratches, in May of 2022, you got rid of that dog, did you not?
Objection.
Sustained.
Chloe was rehomed in May 2023.
We can use whatever words we want to. Rehomed, rehoused, whatever. But you got rid of her. She's no longer part of the Albert family, right?
Objection.
Allow that.
Right. My parents built a house in the late 70s, 79 maybe.
You listed that house for sale for the first time ever in November of 2022, correct?
That's the time we listed it, yes.
Just months after John O'Keefe was found on your lawn.
Objection.
Sustained.
Okay, so that's his version of what happened with Chloe the dog and with his home. And all this brings us to the next question in our investigation. Was Brian Albert's behavior suspicious? The things that he did, are they routine, normal behavior, or does it rise to the level of suspicious? And if so, how suspicious is it? Joining us, private investigator with more than 20 years of experience, Jason Jensen, and psychotherapist and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacy, to offer their expertise on this really significant issue. I just want to refresh some of the conduct that we're talking about. Brian Albert knew John O'Keefe, didn't know him that well. He said John O'Keefe never came inside his house. He said the calls after 2 a.m. that morning to Brian Higgins were butt dials. He was accused of destroying his phone, but said, I was just getting a new phone just before the order to preserve the phone, and then rehoming the dog and selling his home. Jason Jensen, I'll begin with your thoughts on this. As you look at those facts, are they all pretty mundane, being blown out of proportion? Are they suspicious? What are your thoughts here?
Well, oftentimes what's described there is pretty normal, pretty common to rehouse a dog or sell a home. But in the context of a case, and that's what this is, it's a trial where if you're getting rid of things that are relating to a case, that can be characterized as disposing of evidence, which disposal of evidence is consciousness of guilt.
Now, Dr. Janie Lacy, it's difficult to, I guess, truly understand what's going on here unless we absolutely know the truth, which is what the jury's trying to figure out. But he's testified about this stuff. He's answered the questions. As you look at this issue of someone being potentially evasive, or someone acting suspicious, or someone describing very routine, mundane things in their life, what are you seeing and hearing here?
Vinnie, what I see and hear is a couple of red flags, right? So we're going to look at inconsistencies in the context of some important details that you had recapped, right? So we're looking at that, the timing of his phone disposable, right? It wasn't just coincidence that happened in the time that it happened. And then when I was hearing and watching some of his testimony, he's also very unclear about his phone activity, right? So he talks about the calls with Higgins on the night of the death, and then he claimed to inadvertently call during intimate moments with his wife. And there was some inconsistent explanations about his phone being locked or unlocked. And then we also want to consider some of that post-discovery behavior. He had multiple phone calls with family members and potential coordination with other witnesses. And as you recapped, he sold his home after the incident. So a couple things that would tell me is that he's controlling potentially a narrative. So he's showing these patterns of where he can control the flow of information, the phone disposal, the residential sale. And then we think about some of these statements that he makes when we look at someone's language that they use. He never entered the home, right, despite lacking some of that direct evidence. And then him having that law enforcement background can provide certain understanding of evidence handling. But I know we can also probably argue, right, there's some stress response patterns when you're up on the stand and the testimony, right, because it can show some signs of cognitive processing and difficulties under pressure. So we know that also happens. But I would look at those inconsistencies that the defense was noting.
Jason, the one that troubles me the most is the changing of the phone. We all upgrade our phones. You know, some people may change their phone numbers. I get all that. It happens. But to me, it's the timing. Could there be another reason for wanting to make sure that the feds or anyone else doesn't get their hands on your personal phone if you are a police officer, other than you're part of a conspiracy and cover-up in the murder of another police officer?
Well, clearly, if there's sensitive items on the phone, you know, whether it be intimate stuff between you and your spouse, or maybe there's photos of other cases, you know, things involving crime or something that you don't want everyone to see because it's material for forensic value in some case, you may not want all that stuff to be shared with the feds about your department or something like that. And so I can get some of that would be, you know, you'd want to be protective of that, because if it shows that, you know, there's some loose activities about how you conduct your investigations using your personal phone instead of, you know, devices issued by the department, you probably wouldn't want to reveal that to the world or have it be part of a investigation by the feds. But that being said, you know, get it forensically extracted, you know, in good hands, have a Celebrite removal of data, and then sell it, and then you got clean hands.
All right, big thank you to our two experts giving us this incredible analysis tonight. We really appreciate it. I know you're going to stick around because we got more work for you to do. Up next, what is Brian Higgins' connection to the case?
I maintained the phone.
Until you didn't. When you destroyed it a month later by pulling the SIM card out and throwing it away, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you do that in October? Did you destroy that phone?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you pull the SIM card out of your phone, Mr. Higgins?
Did you?
It's possible that I did. I believe that's how I've testified. Yes.
You testified.
It's possible that if I took it out, that it was either cut or broken.
It's not just possible.
And that would have been after the date the order was already denied.
There's Brian Higgins talking about his phone and the SIM card and destroying it to some extent. Let's take a listen to more of his testimony. Again, he hasn't testified yet, but this is from last year's trial.
In September of 2022, you were served with a preservation order for your phone, were you not?
Yes.
After September of 2022, you never received anything in writing that canceled or lifted that preservation order, correct?
That's correct.
After September of 2022, you made the decision to dispose of your phone without consulting anybody about the decision to throw out your phone, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there was an order. The order ends up getting rescinded. He destroys his phone, but he didn't know. He didn't check with anyone before he did it. That's part of Brian Higgins' story and part of what the defense has been looking at and wants to put in front of this jury, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. Was Brian Higgins' behavior suspicious? the things that he did, the things that he didn't do. Joining us, private investigator Jason Jensen and psychotherapist Dr. Janie Lacy. All right, I'll begin with you, Dr. Janie Lacy. As you look at the way he's answering those questions, the fact that he's destroying the phone, I'll put some more information for you up on the board just to review some of the things that have been pointed out and testified about Brian Higgins. He knew John O'Keefe for about a year, kissed Karen Reed, or Karen Reed kissed him. I guess it depends on your point of view on that one, but it was not like you're kissing a friend. It was a different kind of kiss. Karen texted him, John died. He never replied to that. The night that John O'Keefe died, after the party, he didn't go home. He went back to the police station, and now there are indications that there's video of him with a phone up to his ear. And the defense, obviously, as we just saw, accused him of destroying the phone. What are your thoughts about some of the behavior of Brian Higgins?
A couple things, Vinnie. We can definitely look at them as red flags, right? As we just saw the testimony, the admitting to disposing of his phone, the uncertainty about the SIM card removal when he was being questioned. And then, we're also looking at the timing, right? So changing his phone number a day before receiving that court order to preserve his phone, and looking at the disposal that occurred without consulting with any type of legal authorities, especially being in law enforcement. And then his timeline that aligns with Albert's phone disposal. So you're looking at some of these red flags, but then when we bring in the relationship dynamics and admitting to the exchange of the flirtatious text with Karen, and then testified, as we just saw, that they shared a kiss that was more than just a friend, would indicate to me that it gets complicated when you look at these emotional dynamics, especially with his year of knowing O'Keefe and then his interest, as he mentioned, of Karen. So this compartmentalized behavior, we're looking at these deceptive indicators, right? His evasive responses to the direct questioning, is something that we want to consider. And then almost the minimalization of some of the relationships and the communication. And I would also say was a huge red flag because it's unexpected behavior for a trained federal agent to destroy evidence. But, with this emotional entanglement that he potentially had with O'Keefe and Reed, right, can show some type of emotional investment in the relationship with her. But we also know that when people get into these triangulations, it causes conflict of loyalty in these situations. Those are some of my thoughts, Vinnie.
Jason Jensen, I want to zero in on the phones because there's two parts to it, right? There's the butt dials and then the mutual destruction or, elimination of their phones. Like Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, they're the ones who are doing the butt dial. Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, they're the ones getting rid of their personal phones, changing their numbers. The information is gone. It's in the wind. What are your thoughts about that? Is that suspicious, or is that, well, I get it. They don't want to give up their personal phones because there could be things on there that could destroy their personal and professional lives.
Right. Vinny, if they were defendants, any time that there's spoliation of evidence involved, it's always viewed as being suspicious. Given the fact that these are trained law enforcement with most likely a career experience of courtroom appearances and testimony and having to handle evidence and preserve and protect it and check it in and do all the things with chain of custody and whatnot, you would think that they would know better than to dispose or destroy their phones. It's not going to go well. It's not going to look well at all for them.
And Dr. Janie Lacy, I want to pick up on that note from Jason. Even if, let's presume they have nothing to do with any conspiracy, nothing to do with any cover-up, but the whole phone deal now plays out in front of this jury, and the jury's questioning it a little bit. How do you think they receive that information? Do you think they'll, if there's some level of suspicion, it's going to raise suspicion of the entire prosecution case if you've got these two people looked at as suspicious? Or do you think the jury can sort of parse it away and say, I get it, these cops didn't want their lives made public and that's why they got rid of the phones?
I would say, Vinny, it's definitely going to raise some suspicious because of we're looking at, right, truthful versus deceptive, like baseline behaviors, and the impact of also considering their professional training on these deception capabilities that they're demonstrating. And then we're also looking at, how they're compartmentalizing, which is allowing a lot of contradictions is what I would see. But we also know that, right, we also want to consider this blue wall of silence, right? So there's this potential code of protecting fellow officers. So perhaps looking at some of those dynamics versus some of the other potential ones of what the defense is trying to portray. Because we know that there's also this family and professional connections, which can create very complex loyalty in these types of situations.
Yeah, I think we agree. It's complicated. It's complicated. It's complicated for us. It'll be complicated for the jury, but thank you for breaking it down and making it a little bit easier to understand. Jason Jensen, Dr. Janie Lacy, great to see you. It's still not clear how far the defense will go in accusing Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, and it's not clear what the judge will permit the defense to argue to the jury. But in the world of public opinion, they've convinced a lot more people than most murder defendants do that something is wrong here. The question is, what will the only 12 who count have to say at the end of the case? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.